Hey everybody, today we're going to go over how to do a yeast starter. It's definitely one of the best things you can do to upgrade your brewing process in terms of improving the quality of your beer, and it's relatively simple to do as long as you're careful about cleaning and sanitation. So here's some of the things that you're going to need. Obviously you're going to need your yeast. You'll want to let this sit out at room temperature for at least 3 hours before you plan on using it. You're going to need some dry malt extract. I really hate dealing with dry malt extract, so when I get a big bag of it, I just pre-portion it into the amounts that I need. For my setup, it is half a cup of DME to 4 cups of water. And you want to end up with a 1040 gravity wort. So it's going to, obviously vary between, depending on your setup. And so what I did is I actually did some tests and took some gravity readings and ended up noting down exactly what I need to get to a 1040 wort for a full starter at 4 cups and a half starter at 2 cups, which I'll explain later. So for a full starter that I'm doing right now, you're going to need 4 cups of water. You don't need to treat your water or anything like that because you're dealing with dry malt extract and you're not actually doing a mash. But obviously you want water that tastes good. So if your water tastes good from the tap, you're good to go. You can just use that. You're going to want a thermometer. I really like this wireless laser thermometer that you can use just for cleanliness purposes. It's nice not to have to worry about sanitizing it. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. I would recommend a spray bottle of Star San mixture. If you use distilled water when you're making your Star San, you can keep it for a lot longer, so you can keep it for an extended period of time sitting in a spray bottle and just use it as you need it. And then this isn't absolutely required, but it makes this whole process a hell of a lot easier, is a stir plate. They make them a lot more low profile than this one. This is just what my local homebrew shop had available. It consists of the base, which has a rotating magnet inside of it, a Erlenmeyer flask, and a stir bar inside, which is just that little pill that is magnetic. So when I put it on the stir plate base here, it's going to automatically center, and then when you provide power to it, you can get that pill spinning at whatever speed you want. And so you can constantly, you don't want it too fast. So you can constantly agitate the wort and keep oxygenating it while you're really trying to get the yeast to start replicating. And you're going to use a porous stopper, so not a traditional airlock, because you want obviously to keep things clean on both ends, but you want to allow oxygen to get in and out as you're going through this process. I would also recommend a flask weight. I just got this one on Amazon, and it's nice for when you are cooling down your wort in an ice bath. You can just put this over the top of your flask, and it'll help weigh it down so you can really submerge it in water and get it cooled down pretty fast. And of course, you're going to need a beer. This is my Citra Pale Ale that I'm actually getting the starter going today for, just because the keg is almost empty, and it's a very popular beer when I brew it with my friends, so getting this batch started. So cheers, and I'll see you in a couple minutes when I get some water boiling. Alright, so we're getting pretty close to the boil here. The idea of boiling the water before adding your dry malt extract is just something to help mitigate foaming. If you get it to a boiling point, cut off your heat, stir in your dry malt extract, and then reheat it up to a boil. I've found in my experience it helps it to foam a little bit less than it normally would. You're still going to want to keep an eye on it to make sure you don't have a boil over, but this process definitely helps. And another thing that I do, this is absolutely not necessary, but if you happen to have a KitchenAid mixer around, I have a little process to help mix the dry malt extract in easier, just because it's so sticky to deal with. I'm going to go ahead and dump my half cup of dry malt extract into my mixer here. Get a mix going. My water's boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and kill the heat. And then I just have a large funnel over here. I'm going to set it up right at the edge of my mixer and then pour my water in. So that just helps it get a really nice, quick, even mix without having to worry about the stickiness of the dry malt extract. But obviously, if you don't have a KitchenAid mixer, you can just stir it in. It's not a big deal. Go ahead and kill that. And take the... Ow, hot. Take that off the base. And I'm going to give it one more stir, kind of making sure there's nothing stuck to the bottom of this guy, and then pour it right back into the pot. Alright, I'm going to get the heat going again now. And I'm going to let that get back to a boil, and I'm going to right now go ahead and rinse out this, just to avoid it getting sticky from the dry malt extract. Alright, we are just about back up to a boil here. So we're going to quickly get to the point where we're going to want to keep an eye on this and make sure it's not foaming over. Another tip I have is just to keep a spray bottle of just plain water around. That will help if it starts to foam up. You can just spray the top with water and it'll kill that pretty quickly in case you get close to a boil over. I'd say we are at a boil now. So, use my handy brewing assistant here. Hey Google, set a timer for 10 minutes.
Alright, 10 minutes. Starting now.
Alright, and then I'm just going to keep an eye on this, particularly for the first few minutes. Make sure we're not going to boil over. See, I'm tipping it off of the heat here because it's already getting pretty close. I'm going to actually turn this down to about a 8.5. And then here's an example while it's in this process of kind of foaming up what this spray bottle can do. You can just spray the top and see it just kills the foam. So it's nice for a starter, and I always have one next to my brew kettle as well when I get the actual batch going. Okay, so my timer's about to go off. We're still at a rolling boil here. I've prepped my sink by putting a stopper in there. There's my timer. Hey Google, stop. And so I've put the stopper in there and started to fill it up with some cold water. I'm going to go ahead and kill my boil here. Give it one last stir. And we're going to take our Erlenmeyer flask. I'll take the stir bar out for now. And you don't need to worry about sanitizing at this point, just because, I mean, obviously make sure your stuff's clean, but you are going to dump boiling water into here, so you don't have to worry about sanitizing. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this in there. Ow. Lost a little bit, but not too much. All right, we're going to call that good. And I'm going to want to rinse that funnel real soon. I'm going to take some aluminum foil and give it a quick spritz of sanitizer there. And you're going to cover the top. And then put your flask weight over it so you're ready for the ice bath. Perfect. All right, and then these Erlenmeyer flasks are made to withstand extreme temperature changes, so you can just set it right in your sink, start filling it up with cold water, and I am going to grab some ice. I'm just going to dump a whole tray. You don't necessarily have to dump the ice in there, but it makes the process a little quicker. Give it one more stir, and you're going to want to chill this down to about 65 degrees for an ale starter. Probably take about 10 minutes or so. So I will leave it in there and check back with you in a few. Alright, so it's been a little longer than 10-15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the water bath now. Let's double check the temperature. I'm sure it's a little cooler. Yeah, okay, we're down to like 61, almost 62, so we're good. Drain that water from the sink. And now from this point on, you need to make sure everything that you're using is sanitized. Let's sanitize the pill. Sanitize my scissors. And I'm going to sanitize the yeast packet. Okay. I'm also going to do a quick spray of the funnel that I'm going to use to add the yeast. Alright, so we're going to uncover that. I'm going to take my pill, let's give it one more spray just for good measure. And I'm going to drop this just down the side so I'm not like slamming it on the bottom of the flask. And let's take our funnel, add it up here, and it's time to add the yeast. So give it one more shake. Cut her open. And we're ready to go ahead and pitch. And I'll top that off. So we got everything in there. Give that a quick little mix, and I'm going to take this over to the stir plate. Get a slow mix going. And you want to just start slow and kind of slowly increase it, and you'll start seeing that vortex get going. You're going to let it go for 24 hours. You don't want to go much more than that, or you're going to tire out the yeast. 24 hours is right about the max amount of yeast growth that you're going to get out of it. So I'm going to let this go for 24 hours. Alright, here we are 24 hours later. And you can see if you look here, the particles floating around are now visible from the yeast that's multiplied. So the next step is we basically just have 4 cups of wort that we don't really want to pitch into our batch of beer. So we're going to take this off the stir plate, throw it in the fridge to chill it down and bring the yeast to the bottom, and then pour the wort off the top. Okay, here we are a couple of days later, and you can see that the yeast has all settled to the very bottom. Hopefully the camera can pick that up all right. And what we're going to do now is decant off, which is just a fancy word for pour, this wort that we don't want to use. So I'm going to take I just put some plastic wrap on there to keep everything clean inside the fridge. And going to just pour into the sink. And I'm going to leave just a little bit in there to help mix up the yeast, because we're going to use it again. So put the lid on there, give it a nice shake up. We still got that pill inside there that's helping mix everything up. And what I'm going to do, just to help kind of loosen this up, is put it back on the stir plate just for a few minutes. Try to get that pill in the center there. There we go. You can start to see, I'll go ahead and turn off the mixer here. We've got a pretty good mix. Looks like all the yeast is settled off of the bottom here. So we are ready to add this, or pour it over to a sanitized jar. Make sure we get all that sanitizer liquid out. Obviously the foam isn't a big deal with Star San, you want that in there. And now I'm just going to pour everything over here and leave the stir bar hopefully inside of the flask. Not a huge deal if it goes in there, but it's a little easier to deal with. There we go. So I've got all my yeast ready to go over here. I'm going to seal that up into the sanitized jar. Okay, and this is ready to pitch. You want to, before you add it to any more wort, you're going to want to let it sit out for a few hours to get up to room temperature and wake up a little bit, but this is ready to pitch in your batch. Here I am on brew day, transferring my batch through the chiller into my fermenter. And you might notice that the yeast starter is back on the stir plate. So this is what I was mentioning earlier with the half batch of wort that I will do, or the half batch of starter wort. I use 2 cups of water and a 1/4 cup of dry malt extract on brew day. And I will do the same process as before, make a starter just half the size, and use the yeast that I had already gone through the previous starter. And this was a tip that I picked up from John Palmer and Jamil Zainasheff, and it's related to the fact that when you are actually pitching your yeast into your batch, it's best to pitch it at high Krausen, which is when the yeast is the most active. And as you can see looking at this right now, just pitching it and getting it going, it's been going for about an hour now. So basically when I started my main boil for the batch, I got this going. And you can just see the particles floating around there and the oxygen bubbles getting in there like crazy. It's really getting active after the first hour. So if you can do a smaller batch of your starter on brew day and get it going a couple hours before you're ready to actually pitch the yeast in your batch, then you can just go ahead and pitch everything in there, since you're not going to have a ton of extra wort with the smaller 2-cup batch size. And you're going to be pitching your yeast when it is super active and just ready to rip through your batch. I just took the starter off of the plate, and you can see, hopefully on the camera, the Krausen that has started to build up just on the top there. So we know it's ready to pitch. I'm going to go ahead and shake that up. My batch of beer is ready to go. And I have a sanitized jar over here just to pour this into first, and make sure that I don't pour the stir bar into the whole fermenter. Alright, I'm going to call that good. Let's open the fermenter up here, and we are good to go. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'd really appreciate it.